Have you ever gone through a period of time where your life seems to be falling apart? Not a specific event, but a constant, unexplained feeling of emptiness. You open your eyes every morning and you have no motivation, no purpose, no self. There is only one question that keeps repeating in your mind. Is this the end of me? I've been there. A dark period that I was not prepared for. Everything seemed to slip away. People didn't understand me. Friends fell silent. Things that used to inspire me became burdens. And the scariest thing was not that the outside world had turned its back on me. It was that I felt like I was leaving myself behind. I still remember that feeling. Every morning was like an invisible battle. I was fighting with no one but my own mind. It didn't scream. It didn't rage. It was quiet, slow, and persistent. It told me, there's no point in trying anymore. And then something strange happened. Not a miracle, not help from someone, but a sentence, a quote I stumbled across in an old book. It was short, but it was like a small ray of light that pierced the thick fog in my head. It made me stop, think, and for the first time in days, I had a faint glimmer of hope that maybe I wasn't really dead. From a quote, I began to learn about the man who wrote it, Marcus Aurelius. Then Seneca, then Epictetus, men who lived thousands of years ago, but whose words seemed to whisper right in my ear, right in the middle of the 21st century. They spoke of pain, of loss, of control, but most importantly, they spoke of inner strength, of the quiet power within each of us. I didn't find it in grand speeches or fancy self-help books. I found it in Stoicism, a philosophy that is somewhat tough, straightforward, but full of healing power. I know, maybe you're watching this because you're going through a tough time. Maybe you don't tell anyone. Maybe you smile in front of others but you're falling apart inside. And I want you to know this, you're not alone. You're not weak. You're just lost for a while, like I was. And if you are wondering, where should I start? My answer is, start with a quote. A small quote that can awaken the most powerful part of you, the part that life has made you forget. In my journey, there have been 3 such quotes. 3 quotes that have helped me not only get through rock bottom, but also learn how to rebuild myself from the rubble. I'll share them with you, not as a moral lesson, but as someone who has been on the edge between continuing and giving up, and luckily found the rope that kept him going. If you are ready, come with me, because sometimes, just one thought at the right time is enough to save a life. Do you ever feel like the world is against you? Things are going wrong. Work isn't working out. Relationships are falling apart. Friends are drifting apart. And life seems to be throwing bricks at you when you're exhausted. And you start to wonder, why me? When will things get better? I know that feeling. More than once. There was a time when I woke up in the morning and felt like there was no reason to get out of bed. A feeling of helplessness, not because I was weak, but because I believed that everything that was happening was beyond my control. I used to think, if only I could change my circumstances, then I would be better. If only I had a new job, a different lover, if only the world was less cruel, then I would be okay. But then, while groping through that chaos, I came across a seemingly simple quote that changed my entire outlook on life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have control over your mind, not what happens outside." At first, I found it theoretical. It seemed like a good-for-nothing kind of statement. But then I started to think again. If I really can't control the world, then what is left in my hands? And if my mind is the only thing I can control, then why do I spend so much of my time resisting things I can't change? That statement resonated with me in a profound way. It made me realize that the problem is not the world around me, but how I react to it. I am not upset because of what others have done to me, but because I have allowed their actions to dictate how I feel. I am angry not because of what happened, but because I feel I have lost control. From that moment on, I began to shift from a victim mindset to a proactive mindset. I stopped asking myself, why is this happening to me? And instead asked, what can I control about this? The way I started it was simple. I kept a journal, but not a narrative journal. I kept it to observe my own mind. I wrote down what I was feeling, and then asked myself, why am I angry? What makes me so sad? Am I labeling a neutral situation a disaster? And I began to discover something miraculous. The more I observed my emotions, the less they controlled me. I no longer reacted on instinct. Instead, I had a little space, enough to consciously choose how to react. I realized I had the right to say, I don't know what this means, but I choose to stay calm. I had the right to think, I can't control other people, but I can keep myself from losing control. I had the right to choose to stop instead of exploding. And you know what's strangest? As I changed my perspective, the world outside me, which had seemed unchanged, began to change as well. People who used to make me angry no longer had the same effect. Situations that used to scare me became normal. I didn't do magic. I just learned to master the only thing I really had, my own mind. That quote, over time, became more than just a reminder. It became a cornerstone of my life. I taped it to my mirror, wrote it at the top of every page in my journal, and reminded myself whenever I felt emotional. I have control over my thoughts, not what happens around me. I tell this not because I have overcome everything, but because I fell down and then got up because of a sentence. If you're feeling overwhelmed today, if you feel like you're losing control of anything, remember that you still have one thing, and that's where it all starts: your own mind. It's not just advice, it's power. Do you ever feel like you're being overwhelmed by things that haven't happened yet? You're lying in bed at 2 a.m., eyes wide open, not because of physical pain, but because your mind is playing out the worst possible scenarios. I will lose my job. If he leaves, I won't be able to bear it. If I fail, people will laugh in my face. These thoughts keep running around, not giving you a second to rest. And the irony is, we are suffering for something that never happened. I remember that period of my life clearly. During the day, I tried to stay calm, but at night, my own imagination tortured me. Every word someone said, every worst-case scenario I feared would happen, all of it was like a horror movie directed by myself, playing through my head all night long. Then one day, I happened to read a quote by the Roman philosopher Seneca. We suffer more from imagination than from reality. That statement was like a slap in the face. It made me stop and ask myself, what of these things I was worrying about actually happened? And I realized, almost nothing. Most of the things that kept me up at night, paralyzed me, and delayed me, they were all in my mind. We fear the dark, not because it is dangerous, but because of what we imagine might be there. We fear loss, not because we have lost it, but because we imagine the pain it will cause. We fear tomorrow, not because it is bad, but because we are living a tragic version of it today. When I began to realize this, I decided to try something very simple: separate thinking and reality. Every time a negative thought comes up, I write it down. No reaction, no judgment, just record it. For example, I will never get over this. I will go bankrupt if this plan fails. No one really cares about me. Then I confronted it with the facts. Right then, not the scenario I had drawn up, but the reality that was happening. I'm still breathing. I still have work. I just got a text from a friend asking how I was doing. When I did, I discovered something surprising. Reality was much more peaceful than I had imagined. In reality, I was not consumed by fear. Only in my head was there hell. I started making this a habit. Whenever negative emotions arose, I wrote. I observed. I distanced myself. I learned to say to myself, "This is a thought, not a fact." I remind myself, not everything I think is true, and not every worry needs to be believed. Seneca didn't write this quote to comfort us. He wrote it as a warning, to make us realize that our greatest enemy is often not out there, it's in our own heads. And when you realize that, you don't have to be brave right away. You just have to be sane enough not to believe everything you imagine. I can't promise that you'll stop worrying overnight, but I can say from experience that every time you separate your thoughts from reality, you take back your freedom. You step out of the prison you've trapped yourself in. And if you're feeling down in your mind today, I invite you to try something simple. Place your hand on your heart. Take a deep breath and ask, right now, is there anything that really threatens me? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. There is just you and this breath. Everything else is imaginary. There is one thing no one teaches you when you are lost. You don't need to have the answer right away, but you do need to start with the right question. I remember that feeling clearly, the moment when all sense of direction was lost. What had once been a goal no longer held any appeal. Life felt like it was passing me by, and I was standing still. Have you ever felt that way? That's when I stumbled upon a quote by Epictetus, a Stoic philosopher who lived nearly 2,000 years ago. First tell yourself what you want to be. Then do what you have to do. Brief, but like a knife cutting through the fog in my head, I realized I've spent too much time running away from what I don't want, without ever really stopping to ask, who do I want to be? We often say, I don't want to be tired anymore. I don't want to be hurt. I don't want to live like this. But those negative statements don't get us anywhere. They just keep us spinning in a state of resistance, never moving on to something better. After reading that quote, I decided to do something simple: sit down, open a blank page, and write down, seriously, what kind of person I wanted to become. Not the ideal person according to society's standards, but the person that deep in my heart I want to become. I wrote, I want to be a strong, independent, and self-reliant person, someone who doesn't react impulsively, isn't easily swayed, and doesn't need others to validate them to feel valuable. I don't write about money, fame, or success. I write about the kind of person I want to nurture. And then I read Epictetus's quote. And then do what you need to do. He doesn't give you any shortcuts. He doesn't promise you'll feel motivated. He just says, if you really want to be that person, then act every day as if you were that person. And I started practicing. I set my alarm to wake up on time, even if I don't have anything important to do that day. Because strong people don't wait until they're excited to start their day. I walk for 30 minutes instead of lying in bed. Because I know people with inner strength choose what is good for their body. Even when their mind is still tired. I write down 3 things I'm grateful for every night, instead of dwelling on what I don't have. Because self-reliant people don't dwell on lack. They feed their minds on the abundance of the present. Every little thing, seemingly simple, but every time I choose to do it right, I am rebuilding the person I wrote down on that page that day. This is not faking it. It is acting. Want to be a calm person? So when someone gets on your nerves, you need to learn to breathe, slow down, and respond differently, rather than waiting for your natural reaction to happen. Want to be a person of will? Then you need to do what you say you will do, even when no one is watching. Want to have inner strength? Then learn to pick yourself up every time you fall, instead of blaming your circumstances. Epictetus doesn't promise that the journey will be easy, but he does point out that all change begins with a decision, who you want to become, and a commitment, what you will do to move closer to that goal every day. And if today you are feeling lost, not knowing where to go, how to start over, I don't have a map for you, but I do have a question, which, if you answer it seriously, could change your life. What kind of person do I want to be? Write it down, read it every morning, and then, day by day, do what you need to do to be worthy of that person. You don't have to be someone great. Just be a stronger, more stable, and more authentic version of yourself. I used to think that to change your life, you need a big turning point, an unexpected opportunity, someone who appears at the right time, or some miracle that comes and washes away all the suffering. But no, what saved me didn't come from outside. It came from a few lines of words, just sentences, short, simple, but containing a kind of power I couldn't have imagined. 3 quotes, 3 philosophies of life, 3 keys to a version of me I didn't even know I had. The first quote, by Marcus Aurelius, helped me regain control, not of the world, but of my own mind. You have control over your mind, not what happens outside. That's when I realized, I may not be able to change what other people do, but I can absolutely change how I react. And that's enough to turn things around. The second sentence, from Seneca, opened my eyes to the fears I had created myself. We suffer more from imagination than from reality. I used to live in these worst-case scenarios in my head. These assumptions would drain me, even though the reality wasn't as bad as I thought. Once I separated what I was thinking from what was actually happening, I began to feel relief. I was no longer a victim of negative imagination. And then, the final quote, from Epictetus, not only got me up, it gave me a clear direction. Tell yourself who you want to be, and then, do what you have to do. I wrote down, I want to be a strong, responsible, and mindful person, and every day, I choose to act as if I were that person. Not perfect, but getting closer. 3 words, 3 pillars of a revival. 1 to stop me from reacting blindly. 1 to stop scaring myself. 1 to remember. Everything starts when you choose to be yourself and act like it. The strange thing is, when I change my perspective, the world seems to change too. People who hurt me no longer have the same influence. Things I used to avoid now become my motivation. And things I thought were out of my reach now seem entirely possible. I'm not saying that these 3 quotes will save everyone. We are all different, but I do believe that each of us can find a phrase, an idea, a point of reference, to keep us from falling apart when things get dark. Have you ever stopped and asked yourself, what quote has saved me from a bad day? Or, what line has made you cry, but also helped you get back up? If not, then maybe you need to start looking. Because sometimes, just one word at the right time is enough to hold you back. Before you give up everything, and if you've found it before, write it down. Put it on your mirror. Stick it on your wall. Repeat it in your head when you're feeling weak. Because a timely reminder might be the only thing keeping you from falling again. We cannot avoid suffering in life, but we can absolutely choose to rise from it with the right thought, the right choice, and the right action. Those 3 sentences didn't change my world, but they changed me, and when I changed, the world started to turn in a different direction. The final question I want to leave you with today is, what quote will be your anchor in your darkest days? Go find it, live it, and you will be amazed. Just one word at the right time can save a life. We often think of philosophy as something only for the wise. It is abstract concepts, thick books, something to read, not to live. But then one day, when your life hits rock bottom, you will understand. Philosophy is not for learning, but to hold you when you are about to give up. And that's what I found in Stoic philosophy. 3 quotes, 3 seemingly simple ideas, but when I let them in, they didn't just change the way I thought, they changed the way I was. The first quote helps me remember that I can't control everything that happens, but I can always control how I react. The second quote reminds me that most of the pain I feel doesn't come from reality, but from what I imagine, fear, and trap myself in. And the third sentence gave me back something I had lost for a long time, a direction in life, a person I wanted to become, and most importantly, a reason to act. I tell you about those 3 sentences not to sound high-mindedly philosophical, but because I know you may be where I was, in the dark, struggling, stuck and hopeless. I want to tell you this from the bottom of my heart. You don't need to find the light right now. You just need a ray of light. And sometimes, that spark doesn't come from another person, doesn't come from a huge comeback. It just comes from a well-timed word. Give yourself the chance to be touched by a word that can change your life. Find a quote that makes you stop, makes you think, makes you feel like something inside you has been awakened. Because sometimes, the right words will reach where actions cannot. I know, there will be times when you don't believe in anything anymore. Not in yourself, not in the future, not in the fact that anyone understands the pain you're going through. But I'm here to remind you of one thing. You are not alone, and you are not helpless. I can't promise life will be easy, But I can promise this: you can always start over, even if you've been lost for too long. Stoicism never teaches you to avoid pain. It teaches you to face it, understand it, and then turn it into part of your inner strength. And the 3 quotes I share are not a formula for success. They are 3 little anchors that I cling to when I have nothing else to cling to. You can also find your own saving words. It doesn't have to be Marcus, Seneca, or Epictetus. It could be something you heard from your parents, an old book, or a movie you saw in your 20s. It doesn't matter who said it, it just matters that it was said when you needed it. Keep it with you. Repeat it whenever you feel lost. Write it on your hand if you need to. Stick it on your mirror, your phone, your ceiling, anywhere you can see it, because you never know when it might save you again. I want to end this video with an invitation. Live by a saying, just one, but live by it long enough for it to live in you. You won't need much more than that to get started. And who knows, from there, you might be able to rebuild your whole life. If you've made it this far, I know you're someone who's been searching for something deeper. Let me know in the comments what quote has saved you. Or if you haven't found it yet, tell me what you're going through, and I or someone in this community might be able to share a quote with you. And if this video resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We'll meet again, not to avoid life, but to learn to stand firm in the midst of every storm. You are not alone, and you are much stronger than you think.